Today on the Lowdown, a Down syndrome podcast, Jon Wynn gives us the lowdown on school-based life skills classes. Over to you, Hannah and Marla.
Thank you, Danielle. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the LowDOWN podcast. My name is Hina Mahmood. I am an occupational therapist at the Down Syndrome Resource Foundation, and I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, Marla Folden, who is an SLP at the DSRF. Good morning, Marla.
Hello, Hina. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Very, very good.
Good. Excellent. So before we continue with our episode, we would love for you to hit that subscribe button and leave a review of our podcast on your chosen podcast platform. Remember to check out our episode pages for additional resources related to each episode. You can also follow the DSRF at www.dsrf.org, and we are also on Instagram and Twitter by following at DSRF Canada. So on today's episode, we will be talking about a very important transition that all of our families face and need to plan for. That switch from elementary to secondary high school. I'm sure you've had many conversations about this transition.
Yes.
With your parents, Marla.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's a big topic for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And it is an important milestone for all teenagers with Down syndrome because it will lay the foundation for how our students will learn those really important life skills as they move towards adulthood. Now, not all secondary school programs are created equally, and Marla and I have seen our fair share of good ones, and some that maybe are not conducive to the success of our students. Many of the programs focus on life skills, but they aren't often tailored to each student's strengths and abilities, and there isn't always a long-term plan in place. So today, we are very excited to have a guest who can speak on this topic and talk about how parents and caregivers can make this process easier for their kids and what a good program could look like.
Mm-hmm. And so today we're talking with Jonathan Nguyen, who's the head teacher of the Life Skills program at a local Vancouver high school here in the Lower Mainland. And he has students in his class who have Down syndrome, as well as other students with moderate to profound learning difficulties. And he's had experience teaching both in England and New Zealand as well. So we have had the pleasure before of collaborating with him on sort of mutual students in the past, and we're very excited to have him here as our guest on the Lowdown. Welcome, John.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
We're very, very glad to have you. Just so that our listeners get to know you a little bit, we'd like to start with our classic secret questions, which are not relevant, but give some people an idea.
Mathematical.
And not math.
I think we're going to give them math equations.
Everybody thinks math equations. It's everybody's fear, I guess. So let's just get started with that. So if you could compete in the Olympics, any sport of your choice, you don't have to have those skills in real life, what would you want to do?
I think I would do track and field, probably the 100-meter sprint.
Oh, yeah.
It's the show event. Everyone loves doing the 100-meter sprint.
It's really cool. And I mean, it's over in I don't know how fast they are now, 5 seconds or something wild. So cool.
Yeah. It's like the prime track and field event nowadays.
Yes.
Yeah, everyone wants to see Usain Bolt.
It's very flashy.
Yeah, very flashy.
Yeah,
yes.
It's cool. Question number 2, what is your favorite breakfast food?
I like eggs and bacon with maybe some baked beans or something like that.
A little English breakfast situation.
Traditional English breakfast. Throwing it back to my roots over there. So
okay, I got it. That's like a nice morning breakfast, though. That's not like I'm rushing to work breakfast.
Yes, no, that's a weekend. That's a weekend breakfast. Yes.
Yeah, it's a weekend breakfast.
Question number 3, as we're going back to normal-ish, where do you want to go on vacation?
Actually, right before everything shut down, I was supposed to go to Africa. We were supposed to go on a safari with my partner, and we made it as far as the airport, and then everything shut down. So I'd really like to do that trip at some point.
Snatched away from you.
You made it as far as the airport.
Yeah, and then everything was shutting
Which
down.
Which airport? This airport?
Well, yeah.
Okay, can you imagine getting
not in
there?
Tanzania, no.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, we made it as far as the airport, and then restrictions just kept closing. It was March the 14th, the first day of spring break. We were supposed to fly out. And the trip was snatched away, and we unfortunately didn't get to go. But one day we'll hopefully get back there.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's almost something just it hurts like
it's
just something worse than you being at the airport and then it being snatched away from. Like 1 or 2 days, okay, whatever, but you're like there, you're in the mindset.
You're all
You're ready to go.
Oh yeah, well, rough. I really hope you get a chance to go.
Yeah, you get to go.
I've heard amazing things about safaris there. Okay, so I'm going to take over for the next couple of questions. If you could instantly become an expert in something, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a good question. Maybe math.
Oh. Yeah, why not?
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Good to have those math skills.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. Do some calculus on the side.
Exactly.
Okay. And then our last question is, you're a busy teacher. You got a lot going on, especially during COVID. I can't imagine what your workload has been like, but what is your de-stress routine?
Like to go home and, it depends on the day. If it's been a physical day, I'll just kind of unwind in front of the TV, watch a lot of sports. That's kind of what I like to do. But if I kind of need a pick me up or whatever from a different day, I might go for a bike ride or just get out and do something active.
Outdoorsy
fresh air
kind of stuff.
Yeah. Take a break.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. You are pretty much inside all day at your job. Yeah. So I can imagine. Yeah.
Running
yes.
around.
Yes.
Running
lots
around,
we know.
doing all sorts of things. So.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you for indulging us in that. That was really great. And I really do hope you get to go to your Africa vacation and tell us all about it after.
I hope so too.
Really great. All right, so let's kind of jump into our topic today. Can you tell our listeners a little bit more about your professional background? Marla covered a little bit, but tell us how you got into teaching and got to your job here.
I'm from a family of educators. My father worked at UBC. He was a professor out there, and just kind of always thought about teaching, always thought about educating. And when I was about 23, 24, really started taking it a bit more seriously and had the opportunity to travel and get into teaching. So went down to New Zealand and got into or did my teacher's college down there and was able to get the experience of teaching in New Zealand, but also seeing a different education system, things like this, which was valuable. Great. Yeah. Came back here and upon returning to Vancouver, it was pretty tough to get a job at that time. So I went and built some houses for a couple years and kind of looked for work, but couldn't really find much. And then decided I wanted to change it up again, had the travel bug again, and moved over to the UK and spent what was supposed to be 2 years over there, but ended up being about 5.
Wow.
And just loved it. Was working with in a complex school with children from really tough family backgrounds, things like this, and really, really enjoyed that work. Then I went back to New Zealand to do my master's in educational leadership, but also in special education and students with challenging behaviors. And then kind of came back to Vancouver as a long-term plan, wanted to come back. And the life skills job really just fell into my lap, which was really nice, and was able to get that job with the VSB, and here we are today, 4 years later. So.
Yeah. It's really excellent that you have that diverse range of experiences, because the differences between how things are run by country and even by province, I think too, is vast. Yes. So that's do you draw on that now?
I do. Yes. Yeah. We're constantly getting new students, and I'm constantly thinking back to my London experience or my New Zealand experience, or other experiences. I went to university out in Ontario, and just thinking about how different education systems operate, and in the sort of intricacies of those, I think is you're right. It's really key. Just having that wide range of experience has helped me a lot.
Yeah, and you get kind of more tools in your tool belt to kind of manage, because I think educating any group of students is tricky. This particular group of students that we're talking about, sort of a life skills class, has one of the broadest ranges that you could ever see in terms of ability level. So you need a huge toolbox to handle what everybody's bringing to the table, I think.
And have you, are there any glaring differences that you've noticed in the three very different education systems that you've worked in, like New Zealand versus England versus here?
Major differences in the approach and just I find Vancouver really, really good in terms of inclusion and just the way they want to make sure that every child has the opportunity to succeed and have a rich, fulfilling school experience. It hasn't been the same elsewhere. Inner city London is a little it's a little different because I would say that the challenges are just so widespread that in many ways they're sort of hanging on for dear life. In many ways it's hard to get them. Hard to have those rich, fulfilling experiences in many of the inner city London schools.
Especially when there's an issue at the systems level, which I'm assuming is where the problem is, right? Can't really do it. So you mentioned that you're a life skills teacher at a local high school in Vancouver. Can you talk a little bit about what your job entails and what are the primary goals for your class and for your students?
So my job is to oversee really the 15 students, up to 15 students, fluctuates, that we have in our program, and the educational assistants that we work alongside. So right now we have five or six educational assistants, and I kind of oversee that, and the goal really is to build independence in all our students, and to ensure that they're enjoying school in a warm, safe learning environment, but also working towards adulthood, and working towards being as independent as possible. You're not going to get there with every student in terms of living on their own or working, but you can still help them develop and help them progress. And it is important. And then the last thing that we really strive for is kindness, because in many circumstances, the students will need assistance or help the rest of their lives. And it is important for them to be kind and to be able to ask for that in a calm, kind way. And therefore they will have that opportunity to go further and have more opportunity and to do well in life. And
that's such a smart idea. And yes, I totally agree. And I think you're completely right. It's not realistic that all of our students are going to be 100% independent in all of the areas of their life, but being able to ask for help in a way that's going to get you that help from a sort of genuine place of wanting to help the student. And especially, we as therapists, that's our job, to help students and help them build these skills, but people from the community might not be familiar. And so being able to ask that effectively and calmly, as you said, is a absolutely huge skill. Can you break it down for us a little bit? Because I think parents who are looking ahead to going to high school, the biggest thing on their minds, which might not align with the school's priorities, is, are they with the mainstream kids or not? Are we in the mainstream classes all day? You hear this all the time. Are they in the mainstream classes all day, or are we separate and doing something else? So how does it work in your program? Is it, I kind of know this, but is it a mix? Can you describe how it kind of works?
It was a mix. COVID obviously has led to some issues with that. We haven't had the same opportunity to include and to be inclusive in other classes. But that's coming back next year, and as we get back to normal, things will pick up with that. But we view our class as sort of a homeroom, if you will, an opportunity to learn those kindness skills, or those asking for help skills, those self-advocacy skills, and then the inclusion in the classes that may start with electives, they may and then develop into whether it's going into a science lab or going into a math class. That comes later as the students can do those, and it gives them the opportunity to develop those skills, and then develop social skills, develop friendships, develop important life opportunities going forward.
And I do think it is reciprocally important, because we want everybody else to, we talked about this in another episode, that people who don't come into contact very often with people with differences, disabilities, etc., might be afraid. And there's big lessons to be learned around normalizing difference so that people are not afraid and feel fine chatting with, hanging out with somebody who's a bit different than they are. So that sort of inclusion it's both ways. It's important both directions.
And I think sometimes having somebody have experience working with somebody with individual differences or with development, it's sometimes even more valuable, because that is often not a lesson that is taught. Everyone's busy in their own little cohorts of classrooms, but we know, in our job, I learn more from my clients than I possibly could ever teach them. So I think that dual aspect of it is really important. And I mean, I'm sure you've had, like, pre-COVID, some of your students that have gone into other classrooms for electives and stuff. Can you think of an instance or a student where it has really benefited them and they've learned something they would not have learned if they had just remained in the life skills classroom?
Certainly. I mean, we've had students go into home economics classes and learn cooking skills, but also just social skills and working in groups and various opportunities there. And then going back to sort of what you were saying just before there as well, I think that's part of why we make our classroom fun, is that students will want to come back into our classroom. The mainstream students will want to come into our program. We have a Best Buddies program, and they come into our program, they have fun, they enjoy it, and it normalizes the interactions, and then you grow around the school, and our students become a big part of the school, and they become a big part of the culture. And that's really where you can learn, and where they can develop, and it's a big step in their lives and their development.
And then, I mean, the program, the way it used to be before you got here, because I know in our conversations in meetings and stuff, you said that you've had to make some changes because it was run in a different way before. Now it's being run in a different way. What were some of those big changes that you felt like you needed to implement to kind of make it Jon Wynn's life skills classroom?
A lot of routine-based strategies. So I basically broke down the program, and then we had really careful routine planned throughout the day. And it was the first 6 months, it was very, very basic, and it involved a lot of mindfulness, a lot of taking turn activities or turn taking activities. And it was very much done to build the culture and build the culture of collaboration within the classroom between the students, educating the educational assistants on what I wanted, and working with them on them knowing me and knowing what I wanted, so that we had consistency within the message. And if you don't have consistency within the message, that's so hard.
It's burnout.
And then as we gained confidence doing that, we were able to branch out and do a lot more and bring back a lot more things that they had done in the past, but in the way I envisioned that it working. And I think we've had some success with that, and it's developed nicely. And now we're doing very well in terms of having students on reading programs and students out in the workforce through a work experience program, and students, I mean, going into classes next year, they will be taught the right way, where they're being part of groups, and that's something we've had to work on at a whole school level, is inclusion, but meaningful inclusion.
Yes, thank you.
And understanding,
exactly.
Yes, more than just the body in the room.
Understanding that they need to be a part of a group and be developing those social skills, and so doing those things very carefully has allowed us to. But it was not a quick process.
No. I think when you said initially that you kind of create that routine-based system, like a lot of people skip over the foundational steps sometimes, especially when new students are coming into the classroom, you kind of just throw them in there. But like the routine-based system and creating that culture, and I've seen it work with some of our students where, you know, even something as simple as like, oh, I have a separate room for this person if they need to go take a break. Like that wasn't there before, you know, or creating a regulation system on the wall so that it's inclusive to everybody, not just that one student. So it's like those little things that just make a difference.
And it's a big deal to backtrack, to go forward and break it down to the individual skills that are needed, but those are the skills that serve our students so well.
It also allows what you were talking about with the new students. It makes having those new students join way easier. Because you already have that platform and you already have that set up for learning and that warm, positive environment. And the student comes in and is almost like swept into that environment rather than them influencing another student. They're actually kind of engulfed into that warm, positive environment, and you see them turn very quickly.
Absolutely.
And develop and they become a big part of the class much quicker than they otherwise might have.
For sure.
So a lot of when we go to a lot of life skills classes, because we do IEPs in collaboration with schools and teachers and things. And I think one of the biggest features of any life skills class, sometimes they're called access programs, etc., is that the range of skill levels in any given subject or social skills, etc., is huge. It's massive. So how do you navigate that? Because everybody has their own sort of strengths and challenges, and they do not necessarily overlap with anybody else. So how do you work with that?
That is where I needed a lot of buy-in from my educational assistants, and I needed to really talk to them and get them to believe in my philosophy. And fortunately, they were willing to and really bought in, and we were able to really develop a system where it's no more than one or two or maybe three maybe of a higher functioning student working with an EA, and they're able to really know them and really understand them and really provide the work at their level, and it narrows that problem. It narrows that difficulty where I'm running around trying to
differentiate everything.
Have 15 different binders ready for 15 different kids. We're able to divide and conquer and work as a team rather than me operating through telling 5 or 6 SSAs what to do. It's us working collaboratively and being able to do that as a team, and them coming to me and saying, I think we should do this. Okay, yeah, great idea. That will be good for that student because they know them better than me at this point. And so that's how we've kind of been able to do that.
Yeah, because it is such a huge challenge. And I know you were trialing a curriculum. Is that correct? We were,
the eating curriculum, and it was based around vocational learning, very well 5 different aspects of learning that encompassed everything, and It had good success.
Okay.
It was we adapted it a little bit because I think you do need to adapt things as you go in life skills, and you need to adapt to your students. And so we were able to adapt and adjust, but it was a nice platform for how our reading and everything else developed, which was nice. And it really had an impact on our vocational learning.
Because I think one of sort of the mainstays of teaching for mainstream is that you have a curriculum as your starting point to work from. And in access and life skills type programs, there isn't anything. And I think that might be news to a lot of people. But it is because the range of abilities and skills is massive. And so you can't really do a one-size-fits-all approach unless it is based in these kind of fundamentals that everybody can benefit from. Do you think you would recommend that program to people to try out or to pull from?
I think pull from for sure. Again, it's not something that you can just blanket
open the book to page 1 and be like, here we go.
The same way. Because everybody's at a different level and everyone has their own challenges, and that's why we have IEPs. They're individual education plans, of course, and that is what we need to really focus on, is the need of the individual student. So having that wider curriculum is helpful, but it's not as essential as you might think, because you can differentiate learning if you do it using the SSAs and using the IEPs to really plan for, okay, maybe this student does a certain reading program, or maybe this student really needs to work on a money math unit. But I think that's where pulling from the Eden curriculum is good, because it does give you those ideas, right? And it gives you that layout.
So maybe for a teacher who's starting out somewhere, this is a useful sort of guide, because that's the other challenge, right? You're in a school and you're probably the only one of you in a school, right? There's only one life skills program. So it's not like you have loads of coworkers around to say, hey, what are you doing with this kind of thing? You know, where there might be 4 math teachers, but there's only one of you. And you're on your own, you're an island.
It's actually where online teaching really changed things in Vancouver.
Really?
Because when you're online teaching, it didn't really matter which school you were at. So it was just as easy to connect with the life skills teacher at a different school than it was a teacher at your own school. So we started getting to know each other, sharing resources, developing that way.
Silver linings.
That was really cool.
Do you think that's something that when things go back to normal and we're because I feel like there's such a great opportunity for you to like spread the word, you know, like there's so many other teachers, and I'm sure there's many that are willing to collaborate and some that are not, but I feel like it would be so great to have this kind of a thing, like a discussion in the future, being like, hey, let's meet every month or whatever. And do you feel like that's something doable or something that you could?
Yeah, I think it's already happening.
Yeah.
We've this year we've had monthly, I mean, they are online meetings, but we've had monthly online meetings where we've been sharing resources, just talking about our programs, talking about the frustrations that might happen in our programs, or just being able to vent, have those discussions with somebody that you can relate to, and that can relate to what you're going through, or that might have had the student you're talking about previously, because our students do sometimes change programs, and so it has been very good, and the district has also put in a team of support teachers that have helped implement some individual based learning. So we've had a person come in and work with 2 of our students on a reading program and things like this. And that person who's come in goes to different programs, and she's able to share ideas and see what we're doing, and then share an idea with a different program and say, and so the collaboration is coming. And it has been much better in the last year, which is great.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's a huge silver lining to COVID. Everyone's good at Zoom now, for sure. For sure. I'm interested to know what are your sort of mental markers for when your class is gelling? Gelling's kind of the term we use here when everyone, you know what I'm talking about. Everyone's kind of in the groove. People know the expectations. They're getting along well enough to get through their day. And so what are you looking for to know that things are like, they're going in the right direction from the beginning of the school year sort of onward?
Random acts of kindness, looking for students helping each other without us telling them to, or asking them to, or students just going out of their way to look after one of their classmates, or to maybe wanting to sit next to a student or asking how they're doing, or something like that.
Catching them doing good, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Caught you being good. Yeah.
Love it. Yeah.
And it's great. Just seeing that will put a big smile on your face. And,
sure, seeing that care
behind the mask, of course.
Yeah, of course, of course. Well, inclusion's like really trendy and important topic in educational circles, especially. How would you describe inclusion when it's going well?
Inclusion can look very, very different for every student. I would describe inclusion in high school as going into some classes, being able to be a big part of those classes, socially being able to learn new skills in those classes, but also having students just out in the hallways, just having their opportunity during break, lunchtime to mingle, to eat. I mean, we used to eat lunch in the cafeteria, and that was great. And having those opportunities, and I think just having them be a big part of the school, so that the school, they're not seen as different or anything. They're just seen as a part of the school. And that's when you're really succeeding, when they're a big part of the school culture, whether they're part of clubs or whether they're on the sports teams or anything.
And you put in a lot of work to make this happen in your school. And I hope and assume that the school admin was kind of on your team with this. If we have other school administrators and supporters listening to this, what would be helpful for them to know if they want to see more of this kind of inclusion happening? What needs to happen from the admin side?
I would say consultation with the teacher was a big one, because the teacher and the educational assistants are the ones that really know the kids, and they know what will work. When I think a big thing with inclusion that's often overlooked is you want to put the students in a position that's going to succeed.
Yes.
You don't want to put them in a situation where they're going to be traumatized and going into a class and kind of sitting
on
around and just being scared to go out in public then, because their one experience, they're traumatized by it and they struggled. And so you want to make sure that it's in collaboration with the teacher, with the educational assistants, even with the parents, and the students themselves, and giving them the voice and saying which classes would you like to go to, and certainly setting expectations and letting the students know what is expected of them,
right?
Holding them accountable,
but also giving them the opportunity to say, I'm enjoying this or I'm not, and checking in with them throughout, and saying, you know what, if it only worked for a month and then they're getting a bit tired of it, let's change it up. And it doesn't need to be a full semester or linear class,
trial and
whatever,
tribulation.
Right?
And then I think that's the thing, because you often will invite students to the IEP meetings. At least in our experience, we've had that where the student comes in, you hold them accountable, you talk about what their goals are, what their plans are. And with this particular student, it really made an impact, because he was really all about I'm part of the meeting, I know what my job is, and I know what I have to work towards.
Absolutely.
As well. So I think
agency.
that agency, and that's the part of inclusion that sometimes I think is missing. It's not only during the school day, but it's like, do you want your school experience, especially at the high school level, what do you want your school experience to look like?
Exactly.
And I think that's really important.
And we all can have accountability. We all can have ownership. We can all have expectations set for us. Those expectations are going to look different for everybody.
Yeah.
But the fact that you have expectations or you need to be accountable for certain things, that's life, and that's part of life. And it doesn't matter what challenges you might have in your life, you are going to need to be accountable, and you are going to have to take some responsibility if you want to be as independent as you can.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the great lesson of high school, regardless of your abilities. And I feel like every high school student needs to learn that you are accountable.
Yeah.
You mess up,
Yeah.
you take responsibility for it.
Yeah.
Whatever class you're in.
Yeah.
I thought it was really interesting that you said you're okay with students who maybe they try a class for about a month and then it's not going well. And rather than seeing that as like either A, something terrible, or B, something that you're just going to push through to the end of the year and saying like, well, we can adjust it, it's fantastic, because other students also feel like that, right? You think like archaeology sounds great until you're there and then you're like, whoa, this is boring or whatever. But just giving the students that sort of grace to be able to change their minds is huge, because I think you're looking bigger picture at their overall experience rather than the success of archaeology or whatever.
And I think that's where maybe not having a set curriculum is a blessing here, because it really allows you to just experiment and see. And that's, like Marla said, I love the fact that you are, okay, these students need to work on reading skills. So we're going to get somebody to come in on a reading program. Money math. This doesn't mean that everybody does the exact same thing all the time. There, I'm sure, times during the day where people are as a group doing activities, but there are times where if this is an area of focus for you, we're going to work on it. And that is also inclusion. It doesn't necessarily always mean that everone's in the same room all the
doing
time.
Exactly the same thing.
Exactly the same thing, yeah. Whether it's at your level or not. So,
so part of the reason we're doing this episode is for the parents out there who are looking ahead at this big thing, and they've gotten comfy now because it's been elementary school for a while, and getting into elementary school is its own whole beast. And now you're grade 5, 6, 7, wherever you are in the world. Usually there's a transition in there. Looking ahead to the new scary new school. So what do you think parents can do to help their students or their children feel ready for this big change that's coming up?
A lot of it, from a parent's perspective, is really just getting to know the school, getting to know the teachers, being able to make it. Certainly for my program, we try and meet the students before, and we try and bring them in their grade 7 year and get them to meet the class, and then so that they're not thinking all summer about this scary high school that they're going to, and you kind of get that out of the way, because there is a scary element to it, right? Sure. You're going from being the big kid to being the smallest one.
Little guy.
It's scary. It's scary no matter who you are. And but I think, making sure that you've built that relationship before the summer, that grade 7 to 8 summer is paramount. And, and also just understanding that, your son or daughter might struggle a little bit to start. And that's okay. A lot of grade 8s struggle, and a lot of grade 8s have a tough first few months, and just being there and supporting them, and not trying to make it speed up the process or putting too much pressure on them in that first year. I think it's being empathetic and understanding that it is a big change, and you're also going through major changes in your body and everything at that time. It's a really, really hard point in your life.
Yeah. And I think the environment of high school, like it's a little trickier for some of our students that go to middle school and then high school. Right. It's just like, but the environment of high school is so different. It's louder. There's bigger people around you. There's just all these, you don't have your EAs usually, at least. I mean, in some programs you do, but you're used to having that like one-to-one EA support throughout. So that could be different, but it's just, it's just different.
More movement, right? More movement, you're kind of going around the school. It's a bigger building usually to navigate. Yeah. So when you say get started on it early, are you saying parents bring your child in, or school bring the child over, or what are we talking about? Are we talking about walking around and getting to know the layout, or meeting the students, everything?
I mean, everything. It really depends on the student themselves. I mean, some students will make the transition and be absolutely fine. And do you need to walk with them every day during the summer to the school and make sure they know the route? Probably not. But for some students, yeah, you might need to go to that level and practice walking to the school, and practice going around the school and understanding the fields,
finding the washrooms, all that.
Finding the washrooms. Taking a lot of students come in and they take pictures with the new members of staff before so they know who to expect and who they can trust when they go into the new school. And it's really, really important, I think, for many students, particularly in life skills programs that really are going to have that adversity to overcome, that things are laid out for them in that way.
Yeah.
Just setting the expectations and making it clear, because our students are coming from something that's probably very routine based and routine built over a number of years in elementary school. And to suddenly change that up, the best thing we can do is set up a new routine that's clear to them in advance, that they can, and pictures is great. Pictures really, really helps our students to remember and be able to sort of visualize what it's all going to look like. So we know that is a strength for them. Do you work with a lot of very nervous parents?
Yeah, I work. Yeah, certainly. You work with parents that are. I mean, they're mostly advocating very hard, and but it comes from a place of love, and it comes from a place that they really just want their child to do really well and to succeed and to build the independence. It can be a little bit challenging at first just to understand each other, but I think when they do see that we have the routine and we do have things in place, and I think communication with parents is so important. It's important to have regular email communication. Another good thing that's come out of COVID is having the online platform that parents can actually see what you're doing online in the classroom and things like this. Before COVID, we used to invite parents in for potlucks and things like this so they would get to know the class, they would get to see the routines. But you wouldn't want to invite them in too much, just because you want to. I mean, high school is much more about building independence. And you want to separate the reliant nature of the parent all the time. You want the child to almost no longer be a child, to grow into a young adult, and to be able to work with multiple people, to be able to work well when their parent isn't in the room, or when their teacher isn't in the room. They need to be able to still work and to do things independently. So it's that can be a little challenging for some parents to understand, because obviously they're giving up their control and giving up their what they've always done, and I totally understand that. But I think when you explain it to them as being best for their kid, and the question I always like to ask at the first IEP meeting is, where do you see your child in 5 years, and what are your goals for your child in 5 years? And if they say independence and working, well, okay, are you going to go to a job with them?
Right.
Probably not.
Yeah, but it's true though. It's true. And I think it's hard to just take that leap of faith with your kids sometimes and say, like, I actually don't think they're ready for this, but I need to give them the space to try it. It's really, really challenging, because of course what you don't want is that other side of it, of doing too much and then having it sort of backfire. But that's where having trust in the teacher, that they know how to do it is big.
You know what? The student might not be ready for it, but that's our job. That's
You'll get there.
We're there to get them ready for it.
That's
they're
the
not
thing,
on their
right?
own.
Yeah. That's the thing. Is like your expectations can't be that as soon as they enter high school, they'll be able to do these things. That's why they're in the school to begin with, is to learn how to get there. So let's work on it. And I know that in my conversations with some parents, that communication piece is the hard part. So they're more nervous because the communication is only one way and they're not hearing back. So when teachers and EAs are open to collaboration like you are and open to inviting the students to the IEP, it does decrease the anxiety a little bit, being like, okay, so at least I know what's going
some
on.
Updates. This is happening. That's happening. One sort of interesting thing, and something that people have told me that you do really well, is you find the really good aspects of what students are able to do. And I think parents need to hear that. They need to know what their student is good at, because they get an earful often of what's not going well, all the problems, the laundry list of what's not right. And how did you sort of develop this? Because I know that you do this, and I think it's just easier to notice when things are not going well. And then you start seeing it all the time, right? Oh, this happened again. It happened again. And then you get kind of wrapped up in that. But really purposefully choosing to focus the other way around is so valuable. How did you build that as your practice? When
I was working in the UK and working at a school with incredibly challenging circumstances with the students, with the parents, everything. Building the relationship with the parents is so key, and being able to do that when a child goes down a certain path and they're really struggling, the only time the parents ever get called is when the child is doing something wrong.
Yes.
And the only time they ever get usually called and like talked to with a sort of panic in the teacher's voice too. Oh, your child is running around, throwing stuff, doing something. And the parent just almost after a while just tunes you out. But the first time you phone them and say, hey, your child did this today and it was fantastic, they're blown away and they're shocked and what do you mean? And I realized quickly in the UK, especially, it was the first positive phone calls they'd ever gotten about their student, their child. And I thought, well, this doesn't make any sense. Like you've got to tell the good with the bad. And if you say good things, and it's like anybody, you like positive praise, and the more good things you say about somebody, the easier it is to build that relationship, and then that relationship's already established. So then when a misstep happens, they know that you're not just
noticing
upset
that
with the kid, or just noticing that, or you don't like the kid. You obviously like the kid. You're just working towards a common goal of getting that certain behavior to stop, or getting that challenging moment, working through how they could regulate themselves in a different way. And they're usually on your side when you do that. And that's that's not why we're here, but it is important to have the support of the parents and to be on that same side, so that you can have, again, the consistency in the message.
Well, absolutely. And because they're not in school forever, right? So sometimes school is a great place to work through some things, so that when you're done, you have more skills and you can be a really contributing member of society. So it's a great place to do that. And you do need the parents on your side, because they're the ones who are there after you and the rest of the time, Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming and chatting with us today. We've really appreciated it. And hopefully this is a good launch to the new school year, which is when this episode's going to be coming out. And hopefully you can settle some parents' nerves around the world wherever they're listening to this. It's fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was great. Yeah. Okay. Really enjoyed the opportunity.
Thanks.
Thanks.